brought out my zombie flesh eaters one again for the chat, but we've already seen that one. Isn't it gorgeous though? It's lovely. I'm gonna have to unfortunately, as some of you people may or may not know, when it comes to VHS, sometimes the older ones, they start getting that white mold on the reels, and this one's starting to do that. So I'm gonna have to get some isopropyl alcohol and actually go into the tape and clean it off, which it sounds like a really long job, but it isn't. It's about 20 minutes, half an hour at the most. So it's worth it to keep these things preserved.
I say hello to Drift Limited.
Good evening, Drift.
Yes, indeed. Strong uncut version.
Yes, he knows. Good man, Drift. Good man.
It's got to have it on the label inside as well, doesn't it? Because it's got the. Is it not printed on the label or something? Or am I thinking of?
Yeah, it's stamped on the label.
Stamped on the label. That's right.
Yeah. So I don't know how well you'll be able to see it there, but like there's a red stamp right there.
Yep.
Right. That says strong uncut version, so that's the one that you want to get.
Yeah,
because there is another version of the pre-cert that isn't the strong uncut version, and you really don't want that. They're cheap as chips, and it's cut to shreds.
Yeah. Is that another one that says it's uncut as well? I don't know, because the first version to come out, was that not a cut version?
Yeah, I believe the first version to come out was a cut version. Vipco then put out the strong uncut version, and they advertised it as strong uncut version because originally in the cinema it was cut. So when they got the rights to put it out on VHS, they were like, oh, we can make loads of money if we let everyone know strong uncut version. And then of course that's when the Video Nasties scandal happened. They took it off the shelves and everything. Later on, Vipco did a different video release. I think this was like early 90s, where it claimed to be the strong uncut version, but it was cut to shreds. And then kind of like late 90s, early 2000s, when they re-released it for DVD and VHS as well, it said strong uncut version, and it certainly was.
Yeah, Vipco were a wee bit shady with their marketing practices, to say the least.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also they're mastering some terrible copies they put out.
Oh God,
just really bad quality movies. Good movies, but bad quality VHSs they put out. Okay, so we're looking at Zombie to give it its proper name, isn't it?
Well, it depends on where you're from, isn't it? Because in the UK it's Zombie Flesh Eaters.
Yep.
In America it's Zombie, but in Europe it's Zombie 2.
Right.
Because in Europe the first Zombie was Dawn of the Dead.
Zombie was Dawn of the Dead. So that was recut and rescored by Dario Argento with Goblin doing the score, and that was Zombie, of course. So Zombie 2 was the unofficial sequel to that movie. So it was an unofficial sequel to Romero's Dawn of the Dead, which was not unusual at the time because Italian cinema was infamous for not giving a damn about copyright in any way whatsoever. So hence why there's 900 odd Django movies out there. Yes. They just didn't care. So we have Zombie 2, of course you're correct, not Zombie. Zombie 2 to give it its original Italian title. I always think if it's a title was given in its home country, that's the main title of the movie.
Yeah.
But in this case, Zombie Flesh Eaters is such an infamous title. It's definitely the better title than the title that most people know it by. Yeah. Absolutely. Although in America, all the releases there have been Zombie 2, haven't they?
They've all been Zombie as far as I know. There's a few Zombie 2 releases in the US. But a lot of US collectors, like if you just find like the average audience, they'll call it Zombie, but like the hardcore people still call it Zombie Flesh Eaters over there, or Zombie 2.
They went Zombie over there. That's what's confused me. And then they went Zombie 3 for the unofficial sequel to Zombie 2. It's so confusing, guys. It's so confusing. It's unreal. We don't even want to talk about Australia. I believe they start at number 5 or 4 or something like that, and kind of go on with it. But this was directed by Lucio Fulci. So when did you first see Zombie Flesh Eaters, and how did you first see it?
Oh, great story. when I was a kid, I was just preparing to leave school. My sister had just got married to this guy who was like really awesome and stuff, and he grew up watching like the video Nasties before the scandal came out and stuff. So he was well versed in them, and Zombie Flesh Eaters was one of his favorites. And at the time, this new video store near me had opened, and the guy who ran it did loads of like bootleg VHS and stuff. Like I would go in there all the time and be like, "Hey man, have you got a copy of like Cannibal Holocaust or whatever?" "Yeah, sure. Here's £5. Here's a copy." And they were like really good, like first generation duplicates. And I stayed over my sister's house one night, and me and her husband, we stayed up late just like watching horror movies and stuff. And he was like, "Have you ever seen Zombie Flesh Eaters?" And I was like, "I've never even heard of it." And he was like, "I'm trying to get a copy, but I can't find one anywhere because they're all cut. I want an uncut version." So I went to this video store, said to them, "Do you have Zombie Flesh Eaters by any chance?" And he was like, "Yes, I do. Here you go. That's £5. Lovely. Here's my £5." I'm only like 16, 17 at the time, just like leaving school. And I just took it round one evening and I was like, "I got Zombie Flesh Eaters for you." And we just stayed up all night drinking beer, smoking cigarettes, and just watching Zombie Flesh Eaters. And it was one of the best experiences of my life.
I just walked in and picked it up off the video store before it was banned. So I was 15 or 16 at the time. When was it released? Was it 81 on VHS? Read about then, 82, 83, something like that.
Yeah, it was about 81, 82, I think.
So I just rented it and went in blind, as it were, with no real knowledge at the time of Fulci or what I was going to be seeing. And so what did I see? How do you explain Zombie Flesh Eaters to somebody who's not seen it? Because you could start talking about the plot, but the plot doesn't really matter. I don't think that the plot's all over the place. There's holes in the plot and everything. Yeah. It's all about tone and atmosphere, this movie.
Absolutely. I mean, like there's a few beats that resemble plot that you would see in like most movies, but they're kind of like glossed over very quickly. They mostly happen towards the beginning of the movie, like having that inciting incident and then the call to adventure and then crossing the threshold. And once you get past that point, plot really doesn't matter. You're just going with the flow that the characters are going on. You're discovering stuff just as they're discovering it as well. But occasionally, just to keep the viewer interested, they'll cut away to something that's happening on the other side of the island, just to go, "Look, there are zombies. Don't worry, there's gory stuff coming. It's all good."
Yep, yeah. I think the one thing that stands out when you first see it, especially on a kind of grainy VHS, is the gore.
Yes.
And it's got the infamous scene with the wooden splinter going into the woman's eyeball, which is obviously fake, but anything to do with something going towards an eyeball, I think you automatically have a visceral effect when you're watching it. Even if it looks as if it's going to be fake, you kind of like, "Oh my God, what am I looking at here?" It's got that kind of stuff going on, all the usual kind of the guts and maggots. And the zombies, unlike the George Romero zombies, are really decomposed and dripping and grotesque and they're more like the zombies that you would have got in an old EC comic.
Yes.
Than they are the zombies from the George Romero films, at least from the Romero films at that time. Yeah. But the one thing you don't get when you watch it originally on VHS is how good it looks. The cinematography, it's a gorgeous looking movie. It's really, really nice to look at.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the music is very complimentary for all the scenes as well, although you do get that tiny bit of score that pops up every now and then that's kind of like a cool island song that almost gives it a jovial kind of feel for a few seconds, but then there's that hard cut in the audio and you're back to reality. These people are in danger because of these zombies.
Yeah, it's got that, well, it has that Italian sort of like sense of it's quite classy with the score, but at the same time it's trashy. And a lot of the films, especially from the 70s onwards, they have that kind of lounge music appeal quality to them, and that a little bit. I think that's what you're talking there. That kind of slips in there as well.
Yeah.
So it's an odd score, but it's a really good score. It's worth searching out.
Yeah,
as well.
definitely.
I'm checking it's Fabio Frizzi, because I've got it here in front of me, and Giorgio Tucci. And they don't roll off the tongue the way Ennio Morricone does. But Sergio Salvati was the guy who was in charge of the cinematography for this film. And what you find, a lot of people that are making these movies in Italy at that time were also working on what you would call art house movies as well. So he worked with people like Pasolini, in his movies. So there was this all kind of crossover between the artists and the auteurs from the art world, and also the auteurs from the trash world. I think Lucio Fulci kind of thought of himself as being more of an auteur and an artist than a lot of people did.
Yeah, definitely. But this is probably one of his more coherent stories that he's told.
Yes.
And it's very rare. Normally, a lot of the trashier movies from that time look much better on VHS than they do on DVD or even Blu-ray. But this one, Zombie Flesh Eaters, it looks great on VHS, it looks great on DVD, and it looks spectacular on Blu-ray because of that cinematography.
It does.
So, it just pulls you in, just sucks you in, and you're just, once you're in there, you don't want to leave.
Yeah. Pete in the chat mentions one thing that kind of stands out for me. It could be any number of these things, but it's the last thing. It's the shark.
Yes.
You're not going to get a zombie movie anywhere where you have a zombie versus a shark. You might nowadays have a Sharknado, but it wouldn't be the same.
No, because it'd be all CGI. Whereas when you watch this, that zombie is a real guy in makeup fighting a real fucking shark, and you're like, how did they pull this one off?
It's not a dolphin in makeup, it's a proper shark. And you can see the zombie kind of makeup, sort of like mask, sort of like moving and stuff under the water, because it's a guy in a zombie suit underwater. But it's a bonkers movie when it comes to things like that. They just come at you from left field, and you're like, what am I watching? But that's the kind of thing that makes you continue watching it, I think. It's got Ian McCulloch, who was in lots of these movies. I think he had quite a few movies that were in the ban list as well, didn't he? I think so.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what they were.
Yeah, I'm going to have a wee check because I've got it here, unless I'm thinking of somebody else. Because he was in Zombie Holocaust.
Yes.
And Contamination. Did that ever make any of the lists? Contamination.
Yes. Contamination. I can't remember whether it was section 2 or 3, but it was on the list. Yeah.
So of course I mentioned him because in order to make everything just that little bit better, you need to have a wee dose of Scottishness in there. So he is, of course, or was, of course, a Scottish actor. So a little bit of extra that he adds to it. And it's got Tisa Farrow as well. She made a few too. They would always get these British or American or Australian actors in there for the international market. And kind of like spaghetti westerns, I think there were also people that were just talking whatever language they normally talked, and then they were dubbed into English, and you can see that because the lips just don't match up.
Yeah.
But so Zombie Flesh Eaters. To talk about Lucio Fulci, is this one of his best movies?
I personally think so, but to pinpoint an exact kind of like this is the best of his, hands down, nothing else compares, is really difficult. I find that with Lucio Fulci's movies, they're either really good and they're there with movies like Zombie Flesh Eaters and The Beyond, or they're on the complete opposite side where you're like, why do people love this director so much? There's no kind of gray area with his filmography.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I think there's a whole kind of section of movies from Zombie Flesh Eaters onwards, like into the early 80s, where they're all worth watching. So you've got like City of the Living Dead and The Beyond and The Black Cat and the infamous New York Ripper, and then something odd like Conquest. That's a really odd one.
Yes.
It's kind of like this weird sword and sorcery movie. But he's interesting to me because he has the ability to be artistic and to say something in his work.
Yeah.
But he can't stop himself from being as trashy as possible in practically every movie that he makes. And I quite like that. He even made a spaghetti western 4 of the Apocalypse, which is pretty interesting too. So he's like most Italian directors, he's dabbled in whatever was popular at the time and made movies there.
And because of that, it gives his films kind of like a very surrealist quality to them.
Yeah, I think the cinematography, the use of kind of like slow motion and the kind of like especially the Beyond. If anybody is watching this and have never looked at a Lucio Fulci movie, that's the one to watch, I think.
Definitely.
That gives you, that's like almost like his greatest hits in one package. And I watched that. I remember getting that in VHS and watching it twice. Like I watched it and then I just had to rewind it and watch it again.
Yes.
Into the small hours watching this movie and thinking, I don't need to go to school in the morning, so I'll just keep watching the same movie over and over again. Because there were no other directors making movies quite like that.
Yeah. You definitely recognize Fulci's thumbprint on a movie. Like you can't look at his movies and say this reminds me of a Dario Argento movie or anything like that. Fulci has a distinct aesthetic to it.
Do you think that his zombies were more influential in what came after than Romero's?
That's a difficult one, because with Romero was very good at saying something has happened to cause the dead to walk again, but we're not going to tell you what it is. And each character has their theory. And I think that's what made Romero's zombies really quite influential. Whereas Fulci doesn't beat around the bush, especially in Zombie Flesh Eaters. He's like, this is voodoo. There's no other explanation. It just is what it is. So for someone like me, I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that he's gone to voodoo rather than saying it's a virus or something like that. But I think people connect with Romero's just that little bit easier because stylistically they look a little, to me, I think the Fulci zombies look much better because they're that little bit more realistic. Whereas Romero's zombies look cool. So I think people attach themselves to the Romero zombies. I worked on a zombie movie many years ago called Convention of the Dead. And one of the first rules, if you were a character that became a zombie, and I was, one of the first rules was you can't drag one of your legs like a Romero zombie does. And there were all these rules that all related to Romero zombies. So I think, unfortunately, Romero zombies were more influential, but I think Fulci deserved it more.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. I think Romero's are definitely more influential for a lot of things you're saying there. And also, that social commentary, and they had character. Like you're talking about the leg dragging, and there was something of a human assemblage that remained with them, even though it was gone. It was almost like they remembered being human. I think Fulci zombies, because I mentioned already, they harken back more to the illustrations from EC Comics.
Yes,
they're more like my Tatty Bogleman in their visual. It's like it's trying to evoke something that you've seen in the past, and also bringing in the voodoo stuff as well, and that all the old kind of like horror stories to do with zombies. So I think because he does that, it's cool because it's like a modern take on that. But they lack the originality that Romero had with his zombies, or at least for the first couple of movies that he did. I'd say the first 3 movies. So if I were going to mark it, I'd have to always go with Romero just for the influence that he's had.
I can understand that.
But I do think that Fulci's for a couple of years after this were more influential on the B movie side of things, definitely.
Yes.
Than Romero's, because it was easier to take this approach.
Plus Fulci wasn't afraid to experiment with his zombies after Zombie Flesh Eaters. I mean, there was the follow-up to Zombie Flesh Eaters where he did do some work on it, but then it was taken over by the guy who directed Troll 2. So it kind of went a bit batshit crazy at that point. But that was like one of the first times you saw zombies running.
Yep.
Was in that movie.
Was that the one that was Zombie 3? And
it was Zombie 3, but Zombie Flesh Eaters 2 over here.
Yep, Zombie 3. Yep, and got you. Yeah. As Pete's mentioned in his chat, they've always reminded me of Grimsdyke as well for Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah.
But Zombie Flesh Eaters, like, if somebody's coming to it fresh and they don't know what they're going to get, is it a film that stands up today to be watched as a horror movie?
Well, I rewatched it recently, and I mean like a couple of weeks ago, and I dug out my Arrow Video Blu-ray, stuck that on, and I think I enjoyed it more seeing it now than I did back then. But then again, I've probably got a bias to it because I love this movie. I've already seen it. I think if you showed it to someone who was like half my age, kind of like in their early 20s, and they'd never experienced any Italian cinema, any giallo kind of cinema or trash cinema, they would probably be really horribly bored by it and then never speak to you again if you showed it to them. I think they would probably walk away from it and go, I was bored, although I did wake up when the splinter went into her eye and when the zombie fought the shark. That's all they'll probably remember it from it, I would think.
Yeah, I think it stands up if you watch a good print and you're aware of the pacing of the kind of movie that was made in the late 70s, and you go along with that. But if it wouldn't be the movie I would show to people, Beyond is a movie I would show to people, even City of the Living Dead is a movie I would show to people before Zombie Flesh Eaters, and then I think they could probably appreciate this movie more after that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it holds up, but like I said, I really love this movie, so of course I'm going to say that.
Well, Pete's watched it more than the Romero stuff. I think the trashy kind of qualities to it kind of draw you back to it.
Oh,
yes. I've watched Dawn of the Dead probably more than all the other zombie movies put together.
Same here.
Yeah, so and it's many different cuts. I am biased towards that movie. I think it's one of my top 10 movies of all time.
Oh, easy.
But Zombie Flesh Eaters would be one of my top 10 trash video rentals of all time. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
That's Zombie Flesh Eaters.
Yeah.
I'm going to chop this bit out and I'm going to put it as a zombie video. Sneaky or what, guys?